Well, I want to say a special welcome to all of the women in the room. Can y'all just make some noise? Don't worry, they are very appropriately distanced, and they all have masks on. I'm the only one that does not. And really cool, we have our own custom radiant mask that we made for the ladies in the house tonight. Tie-dyed like my shoes, and not as uncomfortable, I hope. And we have many, many, many more ladies joining us at home tonight. So if you are watching at home or in a Radiant party or a best friends party, send some hearts up in the chat so we can say, hey. And this is the first time we've ever done Radiant like this. It is a whole new adventure. In fact, yesterday I was talking to my team and I said, remember the good old days last year when the only thing we had to worry about was the taco truck not showing up? But what makes this year so special is we are not only reaching you in the room and our friends at home, but we're reaching people all over the United States today. We have women joining us from California, Idaho, Washington, Arizona, Minnesota, Iowa, Missouri, Colorado, Texas, Ohio, Georgia, Florida, North Carolina, Kentucky, New York, and Rhode Island. That's just what we know of. So if I didn't say your state, be sure to holler it in the chat so we can say, welcome to Kansas. It's hot, but it's gonna get cold next week. All right, well, we're so glad that you're here. And each year when we set out to plan Radiant, it kind of takes a little different flavor, a little different tone. And this year has stretched us. I mean, it is August and I'm finally getting to wear my Easter dress. That's how this year has gone. So long ago, when life was, normal, in early February, I sat down with my Radiant team, who's over here. Make some noise, Radiant team, and up there and all around. We sat down together for 8 hours and worked on a bunch of sticky notes and a bunch of French fries and chocolate and the official drink of Radiant, Coke Zero. And we planned, and we got a jump on our planning. And we felt so good about the direction that we were headed. And then fast forward to March, and everything changed for all of us. Now, at first, I was trying to do what my husband said and stay positive. And I was saying things like, oh, this is only going to last a couple weeks, and we'll be fine. I guess we're still in the couple weeks phase. Is that what's happening here? One thing that I had started with my team before COVID-19 hit was I decided that I wanted to invest in them spiritually. So I was leading them through a book that I was interested in taking you guys through for the fall semester of Radiant, which we are going to talk about tonight. Don't worry, you'll get a chance to sign up for your group. But I remember the day that I was sitting at my table trying to study this book and this material and figure out what in the world was I going to say to this group, because my house was a disaster. My kitchen counter was full of plates and cups from the people that thought they needed to eat and drink all day long. And my table was covered in textbooks and workbooks and pencils and papers because, hello, Corona School. And I was trying to study, and there was a lot of chaos around me, and I thought, you know what? I am not the girl for this job, which is ironic because the name of the study in which I was leading my team through is called, You Are the Girl for the Job. And I was like, you know what, God? Not today, okay? I'm not in the mood to be used by you today. Because I don't know if you know, but there's a situation going on right here. I was feeling so overwhelmed and inadequate to do what God had called me to do. And I find myself sometimes in a place where I don't doubt that God has picked me and created me specifically for a specific purpose. I just doubt if I actually want to do it. Because I know what He has for me, and I know what He's spoken to me, but I just don't know that I'm living in the significance of what He's called me to. And I think many of us here tonight can find ourselves in that same place where we go through life and think, does it really matter what I do? Am I living in the fullness of all that God has for me? Because day to day, I don't feel like it. I don't feel like doing the dishes 5 times a day or cooking meals all day long or battling the never-ending piles of laundry is very significant. I don't feel like sitting in on meetings and trying to plan things that may or may not happen is very significant. I don't feel like showing up for work and doing what I'm supposed to do for my job is very significant. I don't feel like I'm making a significant impact on my coworkers or my friends or my family. I'm just doing what has to be done. The monotony of life and routines can leave us feeling overlooked. Or what does it matter that I'm doing this in my life? Am I really making a significant impact? Am I really the girl for this job? And I thought a lot about what I wanted to share with you tonight, and I had so many things in my heart, and I always like to speak from a place where I'm learning. And so this season, I'm going to talk to you, or this evening, I'm going to talk to you a lot about what I've been walking through in this season. And I know I serve a big God, and we just sang about him, that he can turn beauty from ashes, and that as long as I'm not dead, he's not done. And I know without a doubt that God has very specific and significant plans for our life, but it's just the day to day that I can feel insignificant. Sure, I know God's using me in big ways tonight, but this is not a typical Friday night for me. And I'll just tell you, it's the Sunday through Thursday of these weeks that I really battle. Can I be used by God? Am I the girl for the job? The good news is I know I'm not alone, because I've talked to many of you, and we all struggle with these questions one way or another. But the Bible is also full of characters and stories of people who God used, but they didn't always feel good enough to be used. And so tonight I want to look at the story of Naaman, which is found in 2 Kings. And there's a lot to his story to look at. And if you're taking notes, I have a title for you. But I have to tell you, I'm not really good at titles. And so it may seem like a weird title. But if you stick with me through the night, I promise to circle back around, and the title will make sense to you. So the title of this message is called, It's in the Dip. And for you lovely ladies here tonight, now you know why you have Fun Dip in your gift bags, because it's in the dip. That's right, we have gift bags for our in-person people. Sorry. All right, God, help me tie this message together for everyone who's hearing it. Help it make sense. Help it help people. In your name, amen. All right, 2 Kings chapter 5, verse 1, it says, Now Naaman was commander of the army of the king of Aram. He was a great man in the sight of his master and highly regarded, because through him the Lord had given victory to Aram. He was a valiant soldier. Now on the outside, this guy had it all. He was a great man, highly regarded, a valiant soldier. Looking in on his life, you would want to have it. You'd want to be him. But at the end of verse 1, it says, but he had leprosy. Now, the first thing I want to point out to you tonight is there's always a but. Naaman had a butt. We've got butts. Some of us have big old butts. And I'm not talking about B-U-T-T. I'm talking about B-U-T. It doesn't matter how good you look on the outside or how you appear to others. We all have issues. We all have problems. Outwardly, Naaman had everything going for him, but secretly on the inside, he was dying because of something that he was hiding. And I wonder tonight, what is it that you're hiding? What are you covering up? What problem do you feel that you're facing that you don't feel good enough to handle? We all have things that we don't necessarily want others to see. It can be small. Like, I personally wouldn't want you to see sometimes my frustration with people, specifically in Lawrence, who are horrible drivers and even more horrible at parking. I mean, they have lines for a reason. How about we socially distance our cars from now on? Or maybe I wouldn't like it if you knew just how much I actually yell at my children. Or maybe it's something bigger, like you don't want people to know that you battle with negative thoughts and that sometimes you have a hard time getting out of bed in the morning. Or maybe that you spend more money than you make and your financial situation is crushing you right now. You see, we all have butts. And you know, we can go around for a long time keeping our butts hidden. We're really good at making sure that we look good. We make sure that our hair looks good, our eye makeup is on point, and that our outfits are, but we spend a lot of time not dealing with what's going on the inside. What are we hiding? No matter how hard we try, eventually those hidden things will start to spill out. What used to be just a little bit of anger at home, now is you telling the checkout girl at Walmart just what you think about her and her attitude. What used to be just one little drink at night now is a hangover the next morning. Outwardly, Naaman had it all, but inwardly, he had problems. Can you empathize with Naaman for just a second? He's probably feeling like many of us have felt. How can everything be so good and so bad at the same time? I lead this army throughout the day, and I do great things. I do brave things. And then I come home and don't tell anyone, because if they find out, I wouldn't be able to be the captain of the army. I'd lose my position, my power, my influence. Why? Because Naaman was a leper. And maybe that doesn't mean much to you today, but because I like to know things about things, I did some research on leprosy. And leprosy was a cruel and painful disease that would leave you disfigured. It would start as a rash, and then it would lead to loss of feeling in that area of the body. And eventually what would happen is people would start to lose body parts, like their fingers or their toes or their nose. Sometimes they'd even go blind. And if you have leprosy, or you could have leprosy for a long time before the symptoms started to be noticeable, but once they became noticeable, you would most likely have to move away from your family outside of the city into a leper colony because this disease was that bad. Now, Naaman, he's in an interesting place because he's the guy. He's successful. He's the one that everyone wants to be, but he had something he was covering up. And if he didn't do something about it, it was going to cost him everything, including his life. I don't know what you came here tonight with, or what you were feeling or thinking. I don't know if you're thinking, I don't know how to heal the wounds that are eating at me, the wounds that are under the surface, the under the armor, what's eating at me from the inside out. Maybe you're afraid that if you don't deal with the issue that's on the inside, that eventually it's going to take you out, that it's going to isolate you from your community, separate you from family, that it's going to cost you a price that you don't want to pay. And I feel like I need to say this to somebody. Your secrets are okay in the house of God. God says, bring to me what is in the darkness, and I will cause the light. So if you want some freedom from what's holding you, then you have to let some people in on what's going on. See, no one on the outside knew what was happening with Naaman except his wife and his wife's servant. In 2 Kings 5, verse 2, it says, now bands of raiders from Aram had gone out and had taken captive a young girl from Israel, and she served Naaman's wife. She said to her mistress, if only my master would see the prophet who is in Samaria, he would cure him of his leprosy. Naaman spends the whole day covered up. And when he comes home back from battle, he's taking off his armor and he goes into his bedroom and he's unwrapping his wounds. And he wouldn't do this in public, but he's probably thinking, I'm in my house. And who is this little girl? I don't have to hide in front of her. She barely speaks the language. She doesn't have any family here. She has no rights. If she sees my leprosy, who cares? Who is she going to tell? But I love this little girl in the story because literally, who was she? She was the slave girl to Naaman's wife, sent to serve others. Society had labeled her as nothing. Naaman said she's nothing, but God said she's something. And when God has called you his child, it doesn't matter what other people think of you. See, Naaman was influential to everyone for what he did, but this little girl had strength because of who she knew, and that flips the script in life, friends. It's not what you do that makes you significant, it's who you know. Do you know the King of Kings, the great I am, the Creator? Do you know him? Because knowing him will always trump what you do. You see, this little girl could have been a bitter little girl. She was removed from her family. She had no means, no finances. She could have kept her mouth shut and just let this man's skin rot on his bones. But that's not what she did. She knew she was the girl that could help Naaman find his healing. She was a young little girl on the outside, but she was big on the inside. And where was this girl? Where was the answer to Naaman's healing this whole time? It was right in his house. She was in his house the whole time. And I'm going to pause for a second here because I think something we do too often as women, When we have a problem or we have something we're trying to figure out, we go everywhere to find a solution. We'll talk it through for hours with our husbands or our moms or our sisters. We'll schedule lunch dates and phone calls with our girlfriends to just let me vent and bounce a few ideas off of you. We'll go everywhere and anywhere except the one place that could give us the solution. We'll never look to our own house. And I'm not talking about the house that you live in. I'm talking about the house that you worship in. The answer is in the house. That is why I am so passionate about people being planted in the house. It's in the house that you're going to find the hope and truth and redemptive power of Jesus. It's in the house that we worship and give him praise and thanks. It's in the house that miracles happen and lives are changed. And we've got to stop looking here, there, and everywhere. Just like Naaman, the solution to our problems is in our own house. That's why you can't be wishy-washy. You've got to be planted in the house, in community with others. You are not meant to do your life alone. So this little girl tells him this, and I have to think he's kind of like, okay, I'll try anything. Naaman had to humble himself and go to his boss, and he had to say, I need some help, and my wife's servant says she knows someone that can help. And so his boss says, go. And in fact, I'll send a letter because these two countries had been at war with one another, but now they were at peace. But when the king of Israel hears that Naaman is coming, he starts to freak out as to why he would be coming. And then this prophet named Elisha overhears, and he's like, dude, chill out. I got it. Just send him to me. And so in 2 Kings 5, verse 9, it says, so Naaman went with his horses and chariots, and he stopped at the door of Elisha's house. Elisha sent a messenger to him, go wash yourself 7 times in the Jordan, and your flesh will be restored, and you will be cleansed. Now, I like Naaman's style. He rolls up with chariots and horses and entourage in tow. I mean, that's how I want to roll up to my house every day. And he knocks on the prophet's door, and Elisha doesn't even come to the door. He sends him a messenger. And this did not sit well with Naaman. This is what the Bible says in verse 11. But Naaman went away angry and said, I thought surely he would come out to me and stand and call on the name of the Lord his God, wave his hand over the spot and cure my leprosy. Are not the rivers of Damascus better than all the waters of Israel? Couldn't I wash in them and be cleansed? So he turned and went off in a rage. Naaman was angry because his expectations weren't met. I thought this is how it was going to be, and now you, not even the prophet, just a messenger, comes to tell me to go wash in some dirty water? Naaman was used to things one way. He was used to going to palaces and places of power, but I think God was wanting to show Naaman that his healing wouldn't come from his power or his influence or even at what he does. I think that God was trying to tell Naaman that on his journey, his healing would have to come through humility. You see, if you humble yourself, Naaman, I've got some healing for you. If you'll listen to this little girl, if you'll humble yourself and listen to the messenger sent by the prophet, I've got some healing for you. Friends, I think we can miss out on our healing, on our breakthroughs, on our callings, on the things that we've been begging God to deal with because we let our pride get in the way. But if we become vulnerable and honest and real, and we are willing to take off the bandages, can you imagine what humility would release? Naaman probably is thinking, are you kidding me? There's no one else other than this little girl and a kooky prophet that can help me? See, God will put your healing and your deliverance in a place where you'd have to humble yourself to get it so that there's no question of how it came. So how badly do you want it? Are you willing to do whatever it takes to get it? Naaman goes and thinks he's going to see the king, but the king sends him to the prophet, and the prophet sends him to the administrative assistant. And this is like being on hold with customer service. Recently, I was in a web with our bug company. Do you like that? Web, bug company. You have masks on. You can't hear them laugh. They are cracking up in the room tonight. So I was calling the bug company because we switched companies because the one we hired stopped showing up, but so generously continued to take our payment. So I had to call to not only cancel it, but also get a refund. And this sweet girl got on the phone, and I tell her the whole story, and she's like, I don't know what to tell you. So she puts me on hold to call the technician. Well, he doesn't know what's going on because he's sure he's been to my house twice. He even saw my dog. I don't have a dog, but my neighbor has 2 dogs and apparently a few months of free bug treatment. So this girl's like, well, we'll come back and treat you for free. And I'm like, no, I don't want that. I want my refund. Put me on the line with someone that could help me. And we went back and forth for a while, and finally she said, okay, just hold on a minute. And I was there for what seemed 5 minutes, and another guy got on the phone, and I think it was just her husband, and I went through the whole scenario again with him, and I was like, I just need a manager. I just need somebody. Somebody in your bug company has the power to do this. I was so frustrated, so I can understand and relate to Naaman's frustration with the situation. He's offended. He's saying, aren't my rivers at home cleaner? You made me travel all this way to wash in your dirty river. This is ridiculous. Let me talk to someone that can tell me what to do. But here's what I'm trying to show you, that if you humble yourself and if you're willing to go low, the Lord will lift you up, because humility is always the way to exaltation. In verse 13, it says, Naaman's servants went to him and said, my father, if the prophet had told you to do some great thing, would you not have done it? How much more then when he tells you, wash and be cleansed? I like to think that these guys are not just servants, but they're also his friends, because they had traveled a long way with him. And they cared for him, and they were like, look, dude, we came all this way, and now you're just going to go home? You're not even going to try this simple thing? They were like, if he told you it cost $1 million, would you have not paid it? If he told you that you had to complete a great battle, would you have not led it? So why not just go in the water and try it? We came all this way, and this is what he said to do. Just try it. I think the same thing happens to us sometimes. We think God's going to do it one way, and when he doesn't, and it's a different way, we're like, God, are you sure? And we keep arguing with God all along, and he's whispering, you just have to humble yourself. Because when you go low, when you go in the dip, God's going to be right there with you, and he's going to lift you up. So Naaman's persuaded by his servants, and he starts taking off his clothes, and he's probably like, you've got to be kidding me. And he gets down to his tunic or his undergarments, and starts wading into the water. And verse 14 says, so he went down and dipped himself in the Jordan 7 times, as the man of God told him, and his flesh was restored, and he became clean like that of a young boy. Okay, so I want you to picture this in your mind with me. He's walking out waist deep into the water. He's frustrated and embarrassed because now everything is exposed. He had these expectations of how it was going to happen, and the reality is not what he wanted. So he dips down, and he comes back up. Sores are still there. He could have said, I quit. I'm done. I'm not going to do this anymore. It was just a little girl and a prophet. They probably didn't know what they were doing. It's a weird land, not where I want to be. Sometimes when I am studying a passage of Scripture, my mind remembers songs that I learned in Sunday school about the Bible stories that I'm learning. I didn't have a Sunday school song, but the whole time I was preparing for this message, I did have a song come to mind, and it was the 90s hit, Da Dip. Now, I know I've lost some of you with Da Dip, but it came out when I was a sophomore by this group called Freak Nasty. My team told me not to say Freak Nasty, and now I've said it twice, so I'm sorry. But don't go look up the song because it's nasty and a little freaky. But my brother, who was 2 years older than me and way more rebellious than me, would listen to this song. And because I'm such a good Christian, I am going to throw him under the bus because my mom's here. So he would listen to this song all the way to school because my parents for sure would not let this nastiness in our house. There's one part of the song that I just kept thinking about when I was preparing this message, and this is what the song says. It says, I put my hand upon your hip. When I dip, you dip, we dip. And then the girl comes on and goes, I put my hand upon your hip. When you dip, I dip, we dip. I put my hand. Everybody, okay. No, it's a horrible song. We're going to learn it. We're going to choreograph it and learn it. It's going to be an opener next year. It's going to be great. Parts of the song, okay? But maybe more horrible is the fact that I'm just admitting to you that this was the song that resonated in my heart as I was studying God's word. So I'm picturing Naaman standing in that water and God saying, come on, Naaman, when you dip, I dip, we dip. See, Naaman, I go with you in the dip. Your healing, it's in the dip. And that's how we get back to the title of the message tonight, friends. Now, Naaman's in this water, and he's like, I'm not doing this. And his servants are like, yes, you are. Come on, stay there, dip again. And so he goes down a second time, and he comes up, and they say, do it again. So he goes down a third time, and he's getting annoyed, but this is his group, and they're there for him, and so they cheer him on, and they say, dip, baby, dip. So he goes down a fourth time, and nothing is happening. Nothing is changing. But his group, his community says, come on, Naaman, I put my hand upon your hip. When you dip, I dip, we dip. Come on, the fifth time down. Nope, no more. I don't believe this. Shut up and dip again, baby. So he goes down a sixth time, and what a shame it would have been if he would have stopped on 6, because he was so close to his healing, so close to a breakthrough. And many of us are in that same place. We feel like, God, I am dipping. I am dipping more than anyone should have to dip. I came to Radiant. I even go to church. I got in a group. I'll sign up to be on the team. I'll even give in the offering once in a while because I want Velocity to be in its new home fast. But I'm tired of nothing changing in my life. I'm down and depressed. I'm in the dip, but nothing is changing. And that's when Naaman's friends, they rally around him. I know it's not what you thought, Naaman. All right, no, it's not coming as you'd like it, but don't quit. You're almost there. So he dips a 7th time and comes up clean and restored, better than ever. I don't think dipping in the Jordan 7 times would have taken all that long. But what it does is it symbolizes process, because there's always a process involved with God. God had to deal with Naaman's heart, with his pride, before he could change the situation. So what does it mean in my life? What's in the dip for me? Well, it means I'll forgive one more time. It means I'll reconcile one more time. I won't give up one more time. I'll start again one more time. It's, God, my husband has hurt me, but I'll dip one more time for our marriage. It's, God, my kids are making bad choices, but I'll dip one more time for their future. My anger and my frustration is out of control, but I'll dip one more time. I thought I'd be back in school, or that my kids would be back in school, but I'll dip one more time. I don't think I'm the right person for this calling, but I'm going to dip one more time, because it's in the dip that I find completion. It's in the dip that I find wholeness. It's in the dip I'll find breakthrough. It's in the dip I'll find God. Not only did Naaman get healed from his leprosy, but his whole life changed. Naaman was in Israel and got healed. He encountered God in a very real way that changed his life forever. So he went back to a Syrian nation that didn't know God, with a good report of who God was and what God had done for him. And as someone that was trusted and highly regarded, a good man, he spread news around his country that God had healed him, that God had delivered him. Now, Naaman didn't go through all of this for nothing. It was not a pleasant or an easy journey. There were probably many times where he just wanted to give up, being one way in public, another way in private, going on a journey and thinking you're going to find healing and deliverance, only to get there and have it be nothing like you thought. Disappointment, heartbreak, setbacks taking longer than you thought. I wonder if not only Naaman, but some of us tonight can relate to those feelings. So why this story of Naaman? He went through some things. He had a butt. He had problems. He had trials. He probably even thought, I'm not the person for this. But yet he allowed God to work so significantly in his life that his trial became his testimony. And will you allow your trials to become your testimony? You see, there are people in your life right now that will never come to church. There are people in your life who are far from God. They don't know him, and you encounter them every day. Maybe it's your boss, or your child's teacher, or the person that sits beside you in class. Maybe it's the girl that does your nails. You're sitting here tonight thinking, God, use me. Show me my calling. Let me be the girl for the job. And oftentimes we think that the way that we're going to be used by God is in some big, grand way. Or maybe that's what causes us to pause, because we think, oh, I could never do that. Or maybe we think, I'll start my calling once this gets into place. Once I get a platform, then I'll start my calling. Then I'll share God's word. Or maybe when I can get on the worship team and use my beautiful voice to lead others, then I'll start my calling. Or maybe when I get that big break for my art or my business. You see, we see our calling one way, and we're just waiting for it to happen. And God's like, nope, you don't have to wait for something, because I've already picked and equipped you with everything you need. You don't have to wait for everything to fall into place for some magical moment. You've just got to start. You see, when I found my calling, it didn't start on a platform. In fact, it was far from it. And I wouldn't even say that this is my calling. I would say this is just a part of my calling. I know that I am the girl for the job because I said, God, I just want you to use me in whatever capacity you have for me. If that means I'm 100% behind the scenes taking care of kids and running my home, then I'm going to do that with my whole heart. If you bring people into my life that are far from God, I'm just going to be me and let you work through me to point them to you. When you call me to lead out in front, I'm going to pray extra hard that you give me the words to speak. See, God is in the business of knowing what he's doing. And when he picks you and he calls you, he's going to use whatever is on you so that his glory and his power can be seen and known. So ladies, if you want to be made whole tonight, it's time to dip. Are you willing to do whatever it takes to be used by God? We're going to close and go into a time of reflection and worship, and I'm going to invite the worship team to join me. And if you're at home, please don't log off, because as my good friend Rachel would say, sit down, I've got more things to say. This is always a special moment at Radiant that we don't want to rush, whether you are here in the room or at home. If you're in a party tonight, we would ask that your host would just set the atmosphere, lead the women that are at your home, create space. See, I believe God has been working in our hearts all night. We've had a lot of fun. We've had some laughs. And we've even had some moments where we felt like, man, God's talking just specifically to me. There's no way that she could have known that situation, but God's speaking to me in it. I don't know what those moments are. It's between you and God. But God's showing up and he's saying, it's time to dip one more time, baby. So tonight, let's give him all of our hearts. As we go into an attitude of prayer, let's just say, God, you have my heart. I know that it requires humility, but God, I stand before you and I'm going to say, this is all of me. God, I know I'm going to have problems, and I know it's going to stink, and I know I'm going to want to quit, but God, I'm so tired of hiding my problems. I'm so tired of being down and depressed. So I come before you and I bow down before you and I give you all of me. And God, I'm going to dip repeatedly so that you can heal me and you can transform me.